Okay, we're just going to wait a few minutes and see if a few more people join. So our talk today is the highlights and struggles as a woman in tech, and we've got both Divya and Kirti who are going to be talking on this topic for us today, which I'm really looking forward to. If anybody would like to share about what has brought them here today and what interests them about this topic, then I'd love to hear your ideas. Please share if you would like to.
Hello, it's Charlotte here. I'll share. I'm a consultant, and I don't work in a technical role, but I work with tech companies quite a lot. And a lot of my clients, I'm a consultant, like really struggle with getting more of a more diverse tech team, even though they want to do it. They don't really understand how they can do that and make it more attractive. So I guess I'm just really curious as to some of the struggles people have been facing, and maybe I can pass on some wisdom to those clients.
Yeah, definitely. I think there'll be some pointers in here that I think we would all learn from, and we'll all have our own experiences and different ways that we challenge those as well. So thank you. Thanks, Charlotte. Okay, I think we will get started now. So thank you ever so much to everybody for joining. I think you're all on mute at the moment. There'll be time for questions and such at the end. So please do save them for that. So as I said, we've got both Divya and Kirti who are talking with us today. So we've got Divya, who's worked in Mindira as an agile delivery lead. You can see she's wrote a lovely little bio for us there. Describes herself as an agile evangelist with 15 years of experience and worked in a huge range of IT roles. We also have Kirti as well, 15 years of experience. You can see a theme here. Successfully empowering people, incorporating a focus in helping organizations and people to grow and having that positive impact on culture as well. Okay.
Yes. Thanks, Gemma, for that wonderful introduction. Yes, so I think I'll just go straight with the slides. So I'm just touching upon the topic of breaking barriers. There's unconscious gender bias in the workplace. So I just want to quickly ask you guys, have you guys ever witnessed or experienced unconscious gender bias in your career, in your workplace? You can just either say in the chat or just put your hand up or anything.
It's sometimes really difficult to work out if something is gender biased or not. But one thing that my colleagues and I used to find quite funny in old jobs was how men would always mix our names up. So if we worked in the same team together, they would just confuse us with each other. It's like the two women in marketing. They, it doesn't matter which name we use. And I'm sure people didn't mean it in a bad way, but I think we all kind of joked about it a bit as women, that it doesn't really happen to the men, and it seems to always happen to us.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Charlotte. Yes. So I think as per the definition, it's already there on the slide, but I think this unconscious gender bias, I totally agree. It's kind of a tricky thing to identify. So there could be some history behind that, or at least a fact about human mind is it can consciously process 40 pieces of information per second, but unconsciously 11 million pieces of information per second. So a huge difference. So I think constantly we would be responding to so much stimuli, so many things that's happening around us unconsciously, because so we just create some mental shortcuts so we can quickly make some decisions, etc. But sometimes that unconscious gender bias, without even we knowing it and realizing it, it just gets hardwired. So I think that's how basically unconscious bias happens. And I don't think so it's only for workplace. Pretty much it happens anywhere from classroom to boardroom, as I would like to say. But I think for today's context of the talk, we would just focus more on unconscious gender bias in the workplace. So, I mean, I would just like to share one of my experiences. It's not definitely a very recent one, but a while ago. So I was part of senior leadership team, and we were a team of 6, and it was pretty much like male heavy type of team. So I was the only female team member at that point in time in the team, which changed afterwards, but to start off with. So it was like we used to have usual weekly team meetings, and first 3 or 4 team meetings, yes, we went in, and sometimes I just wanted to add something or say something, but it wasn't kind of either people were talking over or kind of ignoring that I had something to say, or sometimes kind of interrupted and I was not able to finish what I wanted to say, etc. So it was kind of happening, but I think there was one meeting where we had to drive a new initiative, which I had quite a good experience in working on that area and was really passionate. So wanted to really put across my points and try to really bring some value to the table. But even then, the experience was not as different from what it was previously. But at that point in time, it became really demotivated for me. And I was kind of thinking that day, oh my God, if nothing changes here, I don't see myself flourishing in this place. So something I need to do, some action or something I need to do to break the barrier. So that was the time where I actually identified. But as one of you already pointed out, it's quite tricky to identify because it would be only from my perspective. I am thinking that, okay, yeah, I'm going through this, but it might be just another normal day, or that's the norm in that organization, or that's how they have been through. So it might not be so impactful for others. But I think the first step in addressing is to identify it, and then going ahead and breaking the barrier. So that would nicely take me on to my next slide, Gemma, if you would. Yes, so that's the inclusion through allyship. So once I had that kind of terrible experience, I would say, I mean, quite demotivating experience. So I just then had a conversation with the head of the meeting, or chair of who was chairing the meeting all these days. So I went and asked him, so was there anything that wasn't really right or the way it is supposed to be, or did you find anything that was wrong in these things that's happening for a few days? So I just wanted to know, I mean, what their view is before I just barge in and say something. So, but he said, I'm really glad that you came to me, Divya, and it has been really quite challenging few weeks for you here, but I really want to get this diversity and inclusion included in my team. And this has been a very traditional mindset organization where people just come through ranks, and they just see mostly the senior roles being the people who are already in the organization, and lot of males in the roles. And added difficulty for me was I was the youngest in the team as well, in the senior leadership team. So that was the other thing that wasn't really in my favor. I was youngest and the only one. So, but I was really glad that he really wanted it to be changed, and the way it was being taught was really good. So, and he said that he could do anything to support. So, because the agenda was to bring in more inclusion and diversity, and I mean, that's actually what we did going forward in further quarters. We got more and more diverse people into the team, etc. So just to break this, so I asked him, okay, see, this is a passionate topic that I want to present, and I really want to put across my ideas, and I really believe that it will add value to what we are doing. So I need a 10-minute slot in the next meeting agenda, and I really need that opportunity to present it. So, and he agreed, and we went in the next meeting, and I started presenting, and as usual, there were quite interruptions, etc. But this time I just was more assertive, and I said, yes, I know maybe there might be a few doubts or a few queries you guys might have, but I really need opportunity to finish what I want to present. And really, we can have a healthy discussion at the end and see what's the best approach, and we can go with it. And even my male Ali in that meeting, he also said, Divya has a previous experience in this. So if she presents what she knows with that information and the experience you guys have had in this organization for all these years, and if we marry those, then that could be the best outcome that we can have in this situation. So, I mean, it was kind of like there was support from his side as well. So I finished the presentation and we did have those discussions. So by the time we left the room that day, it was kind of like healthy atmosphere, and the relationship with the peers for me was quite different than the previous experience I had, and it was much, much better. And it got better as we went through rest few quarters and months, etc. So for me, the key takeaway from this experience for me is first one to identify, and the second one is to, when you think that something is troubling you, you should stand up for yourself. There's nothing wrong, and see what is the best thing that you can do in that situation to help yourself. It may not be every time you need a male ally or anything like that. Your situation might be different or whatever that is, but I think it's good to get that addressed. And I think nowadays it's becoming more and more less common, and people are being trained to not have that kind of a bias, and people are being more aware of other cultures and people from different backgrounds, etc. But this was a while ago, but I think things are changing now and it will get better. Right. Yeah. And my last slide, Gemma. I just wanted to cover these two quickly and then I'll pass it over to Kirti. So these are the two topics which are quite close to my heart. One is the mentoring, the other one is the personal branding, right? So mentor, I think I love the way Bob Proctor defines it, so I'll just put it there. So, and I'm fortunate enough to have some good mentors in my career, and I pretty much use them as the sounding board. And I mean, sometimes while you just go through their career, you might have some narrow focus, and time to time having those conversations with them and with the mentors kind of like broadens, and it has really helped me in my career. And one is having a mentor, and the other one is you mentoring somebody, which also I find as a very rewarding experience. I have worked with some of the graduate trainees or people who are just coming out of college and getting introduced into the job market or world. So I worked with them getting their CVs written, how to write the CVs and how to have that interview skills, those sort of things. So I think when you actually have those conversations with them and give whatever guidance you can give them, and when they succeed, it's such a rewarding experience to see somebody whom you have helped have gone and become successful. So it's quite a rewarding experience to do that. And personal branding. In terms of personal branding, I mean, we are so much digital these days. So wherever you go, and especially with COVID, etc., or otherwise, it's kind of like quite a digital. So personal brand is the one which, like, as it says, differentiates you from others. So I think for me, it's mainly the three things. If we figure out like what is really the values that we want to stand for, and the purpose, and what naturally you have that helps you marrying the two. So the key advantage, I think, we finding our personal brand and putting that in whichever, like LinkedIn or whichever portal digital thing that you use, that will help the audience to reach out appropriately. So whoever is in that area or something, so then they can reach out to you, and you will kind of get an opportunity to do something that you really want to do. So, and defining the personal brand also helps you in which direction you are heading, rather than opportunities taking you in the different direction. So it gives kind of focus for the career. So it is just my personal experience and views. I just thought of sharing with you guys on those topics. And that's all I had today for you guys. And I am handing over to my awesome colleague, Kirti.
Afternoon, everybody. Something for you. Can you hear me all? Everybody all right there? Okay, cool. Thank you. Thank you, Divya. Thank you for sharing your experiences, because that's sometimes hard to do, but also it helps people understand that actually they're not the only ones and that you can overcome things. So thank you for that. So for me, I graduated in computer science in the late 90s or the noughties, as it was called in them days. And even going to university at that point and having an emphasis in studying in computer science or just computing as a female, an Asian female, was probably not favorable in the family perception, shall we say, because it was always a case of, if you go to university, you're going to be a doctor or a dentist, etc., etc. But as stubborn or whatever you want to call it, you go and persevere and you experience. But there were challenges, and the challenges are not so much today, but some of the experiences were very, very clear. But even now, only in 2018, only 15% of computer science graduates are female, which is nowhere near where we'd like to see it, but there will be ways and paths which are going to grow forward, I guess, from now and onwards. So for me, what I experienced and what I remember is in the 90s is music was a big thing at that point, especially going into university. And I remember people like the Spice Girls, bands like the Spice Girls and Madonna, you know, we don't talk about the pointy bras, but they made us dance. And it was very much about women in suits and being heard and being seen as an equal opportunist, and even in the music videos. So even from that point, there was a perception that, you know what, you want to be heard. And when you were in group activities, there was cases where you were that elephant in the room, you were the woman, but they didn't ever want to address you as an equal. So you'd always have to show up harder and faster and clearer, and sometimes louder. Not always the right thing to do, and never was the right thing to do, but that's how you had to do it. And then we came into the millennium, which saw some great progress. Probably never as much as we wanted to see it. However, the latter part of the 20th century saw an actual change where the UK Parliament passed equality law in 2010. And then also we saw changes where the maternity policies were brought in, and actually there were provisions put in for childcare support. So women that actually wanted to go back to work, whether it's in tech, whether it's in any kind of environment, to support the families and have that career ladder again, had that feeling that, you know what, they're not going to be deprived in any sort of way. They're going to have some level of support. So that was a massive achievement. And if we talk about now women are equally able and capable of using the internet. The connections are vast for us. The training opportunities, the children or not children, we can do it. We've always got the opportunity now of doing degrees virtually, of courses virtually. We don't have to go to universities and compromise our, I guess, the growth of a child and missing out on those first steps. So it's always important to know that there's always a choice out there for us, and the advance in technology and the job market is even more focused sometimes at women, as specifically job markets out there for women in technology. So when we look at where we are now, what can we do? What can we do as women in tech to support the future of where we need to go with the future of women in tech? So number of girls choosing to study computer science is still only 21.4%. And that was 2020. So that was just prior to COVID. Now, if I put that in numbers for you, so 16,919 girls after doing GCSE went in to do some sort of computer work. Whereas if you compare it to the male population, it was 61,540 boys. And when you think about that, that's a massive difference. So where do we start? It's up to us. It's events like these, colleges, universities, coding academies. When you are at home, when you're having your tech, when you're encouraging your children, that's where it starts. It makes a difference where if you have a boy or a girl. Doesn't mean that the girl can't sit next to the computer and do things. It's equally as important you encourage that as well. And there's also a perception with computers and science and working in the industry that it is male dominated. And yes, it was. However, we are finding a path for women, and it doesn't necessarily have to be you have to be an engineer or you have to be a coder. It could be numerous different roles that are available for us. And there's always been the other perception where you have to go for beers or you have to play table tennis. That's not even the case anymore. There are so many opportunities where women are in the industry to change things. So there are part-time roles available, and there are grown-up situations where there's flexibility and women have a voice and actually make a change, like Divya mentioned in her previous organization. And again, it's up to us. This is where it starts. And it's the younger generation for us, which will move tech forward for us in the sense of women and the children that we have going forward. So work-life balance is a massive thing for women, especially because we are the ones giving birth, we are the ones carrying the children, and then we are the ones that are having to make that massive compromise. And even till this day, it's still emphasized that the male population will always have an upper hand on parental, or what shall I say, how can I explain this to you? The male population will always have an advantage at women not being at work. That sounds horrible, but unfortunately it's true. And there's plenty of evidence around that motherhood is unfortunately a downfall for our earnings, our career growth, and statistically, we lose 4 to 5% of earnings per child, which is where we need to push further on making things equal. And many of the organizations nowadays have 2 simple things they can incorporate with that. And this is predominantly in tech that we've made a stance, which is an amazing, and I can say that from Mindira's perspective as well. So shared parental leave. It's really important that people understand that shared parental leave is available and it's not looked as an embarrassing, a cultural move. And especially in the culture that we're in, it becomes well, why should I stay at home? Well, equally, you are a parent as a male. So that is opportunities there for organizations to make things fairer and equal. And actually, reading some of the statistics, there's actually 1 in 10 fathers that want to take the option, and 85% of the fathers wish to take the option, but never do because of the perception it comes with, that builds with it. And the other side of it is flexible working. Tech has an amazing, amazing flexible opportunity, and we don't shout about it enough. 88% of fathers said that flexible working would help them, whether that's in tech, whether it's in a different industry. But in tech specifically for women, it's a massive opportunity for us to have growth, to keep our credibility, and also make sure that our home life and balance is there with children. We don't miss out on those first steps, those school runs. And actually, if you're working in the morning at 6 o'clock in the morning, as long as your customers and how you're working doesn't affect your business, there's nothing to stop you working in the evening or make sure that your work-life balance for you and your family and around you. And of course, there's earning opportunities. The tech industry now more than ever is thriving, and there's always opportunities in the tech world for women to grow, to learn, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in tech. As much as my own experience, I started at university doing computer science. For one reason or another, didn't ever pursue that. But I'm here now and I'm able to understand tech. But even then, I'm still not coder. I am actually working people operations and I work in a different environment, but I understand and I have the equal opportunity like anybody else. And again, it doesn't stop me from having to learn something different or going into coding, because here you're empowered in the tech industry to learn and grow and earn at the same time. That's it from me, thank you. Any questions? Any thoughts? Anybody want to share their own experiences as well?
Can I ask a question then, if no one else
Thank you
is?
very much for some great topics that you've raised there. The one around having a family and it impacting your career is something that's close to me, having gone through those kind of well, having a family, those changes recently. But yeah, I don't know, would anybody like to share any struggles that they have faced or anything that they've come across?
Can I ask a question? I can share, by the way, that I see discrimination as a parent. Can you hear me? Just checking you can hear me. Yeah.
Rich, I think
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, cool. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see as a parent discrimination in the sense that it's quite sort of weird sometimes how much people celebrate when I'm a dad out and about with two kids, particularly when they were younger, like, oh, you're doing such a great job. And like, I'm aware my wife doesn't get that if she's kind of struggling through a load of, carrying the shopping and managing the kids and just being a parent, if you like. So I do find on that, it can help if you kind of accuse the blokes of not calling it babysitting when you're looking after your own kids. That tends to kind of land quite well. But the question I was going to ask is, what are the so I was doing some reading up on this and trying to think about what's the difference between gender and sex. And the reason for that is that when I read the Discrimination Act, the protected characteristic is sex rather than gender. And the furthest I could get with gender is that gender is like a set of norms associated with sex, as in generally women spend longer doing childcare and therefore all the things that Kirti was saying. But are there any other kind of things to read up on or think about in terms of the difference?
Yeah, I believe that gender orientation is part of the Equality Act, and that is how an individual identifies. So I think that's what you're looking at rather than sex as well, but how you identify, not just as male, woman, but also as non-binary, transgender, and encompasses all of that as well. There's a lot of different identities to consider.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was quite thing when I was reading some of these things. It doesn't kind of like not only us who feel that there's the gender bias. I think there were quite a few interesting things. I saw many of the male colleagues as well in the workplace and feeling some sort of gender bias towards them as well. So it's not kind of like, I think, a problem only for one gender or sex, whatever we were calling it as, but I think it is in general this unconscious bias. If we just make ourselves a little bit aware of it, I think it can be a plain green field and everybody can help. Yeah,
I definitely wasn't trying to ask for
yeah,
like,
no, I mean,
consideration or pretend I don't have privilege.
Yeah.
I just mean I was just trying to say that I could see it.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was kind of an interesting thing for me to know as well. So yeah, I was just reading through. Right.
Thank you. Did anybody ever have anything else that they would like to ask or contribute? No? Okay, well, thank you ever so much, everybody, for coming to our talk. Do we have the next one for next week is on the different roles within tech, and we will hopefully see you there. Thank you ever so much. Speak soon.
Cheers and thanks, guys.
Bye.